Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Out of the Ice. So, right off the bat, we forgot to do a before watch segment.
Whoopsie daisy.
That's completely my fault.
It completely slipped my mind, too.
Yeah, but that's to be expected. Miss has to take notes to remember movie. So, sorry, but, It's been a bit since we've done a not Dragon Ball episode in recording too.
Oh my god, yeah. When's the last time? I don't even remember now.
I don't know.
Great Muppets.
Yeah, especially since, for the time being, we've kind of gotten off of a strict bi-weekly schedule so that I don't die from pre-production. So we watched Spider-Man 2. We've watched Spider-Man 1. Before, and I gave Kat a choice of either continuing the Batman film franchise or the Spider-Man film franchise.
And my poor heart just could not stand the thought of Michael Keaton not being Batman anymore.
Yep, she looked up the info for the next Batman movie, remembered through that Michael Keaton's out as Batman, and she's like, nope! I'd rather see more of Tobey Maguire than not more of Michael Keaton. And I'm like, okay, Spider-Man 2 it is. So, yeah, I guess right off the bat, this is seen by a lot of people, and for a long time was seen to me as the best Spider-Man movie. And I'm just going to say right off the bat something that might make me very unpopular right from the start. Having watched it again now, it is not my favorite Spider-Man movie.
Oh, damn.
My favorite Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man PS4. But if we're counting actual movies, then it would probably be Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse, yeah. I don't know why that doesn't come up in my brain as Spider-Man movie, but...
Because it's not Peter Parker as the main character, I guess.
Yeah,
that is
probably
a hurdle between some people who are more mainstream.
Yeah.
But, I already knew Miles. I've known Miles for years, and I'd wanted Miles to get a movie.
But you know what? That's fair. I mean...
I still want Miles to get a live-action movie, too.
Even though I didn't really know who Miles was, I enjoyed Out of the Spider-Verse very, very much.
Yeah, I still think that Miles should get a live-action movie. At the very least, he's been talked about in the MCU.
Yeah.
Peter encountered the Prowler in civilian form, and, I think there's even, a deleted scene of him talking to Miles, being like, hey, man, I'm kind of tied up right now. I think I might be late, that kind of thing. So Miles does exist. I just don't know how they would do Miles in the MCU when they kind of turned Peter into Miles. The MCU version of Ned is just Genki, and and the way that they have MJ kind of be this punk rock-esque bad girl who's not really all that bad is just Gwen Stacy, Ghost Spider. It's just Miles' crew. That's just who it is. And Flash Thompson is not at all Flash Thompson, but I like their version of Flash Thompson because it makes sense. But even the fact of Peter in the MCU being at a gifted school for, young geniuses, Peter was never in that. That was Miles.
Oh, yeah.
Miles was the boy genius. Peter went to a normal high school in Queens and then was recognized as a genius level intellect in college. Because he just wasn't very vocal about that. And also it was the 60s, and so even if you were a genius level intellect, in the mainstream, you were just a nerd. Get out of here, Poindexter.
I feel like, speaking of nerd Poindexter, I feel like this movie, at every point, just shoved in the face that Peter's just a total dweebus. Everything kept going wrong for him.
Yeah, Well, they were very much hinging on the Parker luck, which is a thing from the comics.
Yeah.
Parker luck is essentially Murphy's Law.
Everything that can go wrong will go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good theoretical physicist thing. Actually, is it? It might just be more of a screen trope. I don't know if anyone actually, considers that a real theoretical physics thing.
But yeah. as far as it not being your favorite Spider-Man movie, but think about it in the
But
context,
it used to be for a long time.
in the context of this movie came out in 2004.
Yes.
Like,
Oh yeah.
what competition did it have?
Spider-Man 1. And the TV show. And I think Iron Man was still a couple years away. I think that was 2006.
I mean, as far as best Spider-Man content.
Then there was also the 70s like TV movie
Mm-hmm.
and the Japanese Super Sentai show.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting.
And the 60s
Sentai
cartoon.
show.
And the 80s cartoon. Well, actually, there were 2 80s cartoons. There was The Amazing Spider-Man, and then there was also Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which was him teamed up with Iceman and Firestorm. Firestorm or Firestar? I forget. They're not they're X-Men, so fucking who cares? And those series were going on at the same time, and it was basically like a Sonic, like Adventures of Sonic and Sat AM kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Except, like, I think in His Amazing Friends was supposed to be a follow-up, but was going on at the same time and had the same design for Peter, but also had a different voice actor because it was going on at the same time and were on 2 different networks. So... And also, they had this weird thing in the 80s Spider-Man cartoon where, like, they had Captain America in an episode and they drew out his ears, which, like, sometimes, you know, they don't have Cap's ears showing. They'll just have, like, you know, like a covering over his ears, you know, which some helmets do. So it makes sense for that to be a thing. And it's just like, you know, and then he's got, like, a receiver or something in his ears. This wasn't that. They had his old ears drawn out and then it was just colored blue, like his costume cowl was just perfectly molded to the contours of his ears.
Weird.
Which seems so uncomfortable and like you wouldn't be able to hear anything.
No.
The whole time you should have been like, what was that? Huh? But anyway, so Spider-Man 2 picks up, I believe, 2 years after Spider-Man 1?
I don't think the movie explicitly said.
Well, it was 2 years after Uncle Ben's death.
Okay.
And I know Spider-Man 1 takes place over the course of like a year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it was like either 1.5 years or 2 years or something around there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and pretty much everything is going wrong for Peter.
Peter loses his job immediately because he...
Like loses his part-time job.
Pizza time.
Almost loses his freelance gig at the Bugle. Is failing his classes. His bike gets destroyed at one point. Weirdly, this version of Peter Parker has a license.
Yeah.
Because like he's shown driving both that bike and a car. In reality, Peter didn't have a license for like most of the time.
Oh, really?
Because he didn't need it.
That's fair. You mean...
The only time he really got a driver's license was when he was hired by whatever the fuck company, I don't remember which one, that commissioned him to help create the Spider-Mobile.
I mean, when you live in New York.
Yeah, and they paid him for that, but then they couldn't actually pay him for that because he refused to give his real name, and they couldn't sign a check to Spider-Man because that was not a recognized person. It's also why he almost never gets paid when he's on the Avengers teams either, because he refuses to give out his identity.
Oh.
Yep. And the one time he did give out his identity was because he was currently working for Tony Stark, who already did know his identity, and then Civil War happened, and Tony Stark literally pressured him to give his identity away in mass public under threat of firing and arrest. And granted, Tony was his friend.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, it's almost like everyone in Civil War was out of character.
Yeah.
Miller. I don't like your writing, Miller. You are bad at it. Anyway, he had like one good thing. But yeah, so Peter he's missing appointments with friends. He's not talking to anybody. Mary Jane doesn't know who he is anymore.
Very much. What I was taking from it was that he's just very bad at balancing his life between Spider-Man and Peter.
Yeah.
And the Peter part of his life was failing more miserably at first.
Mm-hmm.
But as the movie goes on, even Spider-Man starts falling apart.
Yeah. And so, like, before we get further into the synopsis, like, what were your general thoughts after watching the movie?
I really adored... Because when I watched Spider-Man 1, I liked the movie, but I didn't think of it as anything super special. And the special effects were a little weird for me watching because I'm just so used to whatever the current MCU movie is.
Mm-hmm.
So special effects didn't seem like the best to me, but I had to remember, all right, this was like, 2001, 2002 or something like that.
Yeah.
For some reason, the special effects looked a lot better.
Well, I mean, this was coming off of this, like, the smash success of Spider-Man 1. So probably Sony was just like, throw all the money at it.
We have more budget.
Like, throw all the money at it. Sam Raimi was probably given a bit more freedom, so he could be more creative with it to hide the special effects. And also, they were doing more practical effects mixed with visual effects because, I didn't re-look it up, so if I'm wrong, fuck it, I'm wrong. But, I seem to remember hearing on multiple different sources that in close-up shots, Doc Ock's arms, like his robotic arms, were physical effects. Like, they were advanced, like, puppet animatronic things.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it definitely seems like that, because there are definitely some where you're like, I see no way that that's not a real thing.
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't even think about it. It looked that seamless to me.
Yeah, and the fact that there are times where it's a physical thing, it makes it easier to believe when it's fake. Because, like with Doc Ock's tentacles, the fact that there were real things, and I think they showed the real things first, like they show it, on its stand and it's a prop, and then they show close-ups of it detaching and going around and all this stuff, so that would all have been real for the most part, possibly CG assisted to add some details of undulation or whatever. But all of that stuff, and they use that first. And then as they go, they introduce more and more stuff. But then your brain already subconsciously is because subconsciously you can tell when something's there and when something's not on screen, usually. If it's really fucking good, then maybe you'll be tricked. But the more you see that, your brain's going to catch on.
Yeah.
We just have this thing, and it plays into the uncanny valley effect, where our brains just know when something's real or not. Which is why it's perception is reality. Yes, but. But no, most people can tell reality from fiction. And that's why using practical effects mixed with visual effects is so fucking important, and why it always makes me so upset when it's like for Beauty and the Beast, right?
Yeah.
They were going to do the Beast in the live action remake with prosthetics and makeup, and it was all going to be real.
Yeah.
And then halfway in the production, they were like, fuck it, we'll just CGI it. And wouldn't you know it, it looks like shit. Because I immediately know it's not real. Meanwhile, why do the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park work? Because in the close-up shots and when they could do it, it was fucking real.
It still looks very, very good to this day.
It is so important to blend it, and when you cheap out and just do it completely digitally, it's so much harder to keep up that suspension of disbelief. But anyway, so yeah,
other thoughts I had were this is the thing that stuck out to me the most about this movie too. It felt different because this movie very much felt like a one long character piece.
Yes.
Even though Doc Ock was the villain, that was not the main conflict. The main conflict was Peter and his self-doubts.
And honestly, that makes it feel a lot more like an actual Spider-Man comic story.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times, especially in the early Spider-Man comics, which these three movies were very much inspired by.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can even tell with the sets and stuff. The fucking bank had a giant vault with money sacks in it.
Oh yeah, that
These
was so
were
cheesy.
inspired by the Silver Age of comics.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be until the Amazing Spider-Man in the MCU when everything started pulling from the Ultimate Comics line where it's like, oh, what if Marvel had really started in like the early 2000s, you know? And I have some misgivings with that because I honestly feel like some of the Ultimate Comics ideas weren't good. For instance, the fact that Falcon in the MCU is based majorly on Falcon from the Ultimate Comics is why Red Wing is a drone and not a falcon, and I will never forgive them for that. What? Falcon is literally pretty much the only character I can think of that is a mainstream Marvel character that has an animal sidekick. And they took that away from him and thus me.
Oh. Scott gets very passionate about his superheroes, guys.
I especially get passionate about my animal sidekicks for superheroes, because really it's DC and then nobody else does it. You know, Superman has Crypto, Batman has Bat-Hound, where Supergirl has like 3. She has a horse, a monkey, and a cat.
Amazing.
And they're all from Krypton.
But even down to like even during like the final like fight of the movie, like it didn't even feel like it was felt less about the pew pows pow, you know, sound effects, punch bams.
Yeah.
It still felt like Peter just trying to talk through a situation.
Dr. Octavius, we have to shut it down. Please tell me how.
If that makes sense.
Especially near the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are some parts where I thought that Peter was out of character, and unfortunately still, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is not as quippy as Spider-Man should be. Like, this is a character that quips so much that it is literally a button in the PS4 game. Like, you can
really?
You can just select it as your special power, click in the sticks, and he just finger guns and quips. It has the fastest cooldown, and you actually can do an exploit where you use the thing that has the longest cooldown, which refills all of your ammo for all of your gadgets, and then immediately switch to the quip one. The cooldown for the quip goes on, and then you switch right back.
That's hilarious.
Yep.
Finger guns to load your guns.
But yeah, and there's just like tons of them, and then eventually like you get to the point of like, wait, am I repeating myself? Oh god, I need to get a writer. Yeah, but like I never felt that Tobey's Spider-Man quipped enough. You know? Like, in fact, he doesn't really talk all that much when he's as Spider-Man. You know? Like, the most we got in this one was, this is really heavy. You know?
Yeah, like he just felt like kind of a silent loser overall.
Yeah, and like he quipped more as Peter than he did as Spider-Man.
Which feels like that'd be the opposite.
It should be the opposite. Like, because modern Peter in the comics does quip almost as much as Spider-Man, but kind of differently. But like, especially back in the day, especially in the 60s comics, Peter was still just kind of a nerd of just, you know, like, oh, well, whatever you say, Jonah, you know, like all that stuff. But then as Spider-Man, he was allowed to like kind of get that out. And he also, like, it's been explained in later comics that a lot of that quipping is kind of a defense mechanism because he's constantly in life and death situations. So he tries to make a joke out of it to not, you know, realize, oh, fuck, I could die. And then, you know, kind of lose his courage in times where he really can't afford to. And that's not to say that Tobey is bad as Spider-Man. I think that's more of a thing of like, the writers should have given him more quips, or they should have like, you know, maybe like said, hey, Tobey, feel free to improv some jokes.
Yeah.
You know, there was a couple in Spider-Man 1 too, but it was like him just going like, hey, Gobby, or like, you know, it's like, it's you who's out goblin, out of your mind, and stuff like this. But like there wasn't
Doesn't
really
feel
all that
like
much.
snappy and sharp quips.
Yeah. And I think that might be like a writer's thing. Honestly, I kind of feel like I have that same problem with Tom Holland.
Really?
He doesn't quip all that much either.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, the one that sticks out to me as a quip is from Far From Home, and it's like, I'm really strong and sticky. And that's it.
Again, it's maybe it's just something I didn't really notice that he doesn't do enough of, just because I don't follow the comics.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm hoping that maybe in No Way Home, like, because there are those rumors that maybe he'll see some other Spider-Mans, or he'll just encounter other Spider-Man's villains from like the previous franchises. I don't know. Like, you know, everyone says, oh, the other Spider-Mans are in it, but like then the actors themselves say, no, we're not in it. So who knows? Marvel constantly is lying. So we don't know, and we won't know until December when it comes out, or until a trailer.
Oh, is it coming out this year?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. But
I'll ditch my family to go see it.
Absolutely. As you should. This is more important. But yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like he just hasn't been given the chance to a lot. Like, this Spider-Man is funny, and I definitely know that Tom Holland can quip, right? Because Tom Holland in interviews is funny, and like on set is funny, and like we'll do bloopers and it'll be funny and all this stuff. And I feel like it's just, you know, we don't get to see enough of it. There has been a little, like the whole thing of like, oh, hey, Spider-Boy, Spider-Man. All right, Spider-Man, do a flip. And then he does a flip. Like, that's a very Spider-Man and New York Dennison interaction. That's very true to the comics. Like, that's the kind of thing. Or like him arguing with, you know, people popping their heads out of the windows and all that stuff. But I feel like hopefully as the character grows through the movies, we'll get to see Tom Holland's version of Peter Parker, because that version of Peter Parker is still very young. He is still very new to being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So just hopefully he will grow into more of a smartass, you know? Because I see his potential. I see the sass potential. But really the one that got it great for quip was Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield.
In the Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
Especially because like he like on the first or so night out of him being Spider-Man, like just general Spider-Maning, not I'm going for revenge Spider-Maning. He encounters a guy who's like, you know, trying to steal a car, and like the guy like pulls a knife on him. It's like, my one weakness, tiny knives.
I need to watch it because I haven't had a chance to yet.
First one is a great starting point, and then the second one destroys it.
Oof.
But yeah. But we're not talking about franchise enders. That'll be when we cover Spider-Man 3.
I remember the middle school band room discourse on that movie, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention about like my thoughts and the characters is that I really appreciated all the side characters really had at least a scene to really shine.
Yeah.
Like Aunt May just bashing Doc Ock.
Yeah. Shame on you. And she hits him hard. His glasses break.
Yeah. Like, damn.
Sick.
James Franco just brought it all out in this time around.
Like James Franco, who's normally like, you know, paired up with Seth Rogen and like characters like that for like, you know, stoner or comedy movies.
Yeah, stupid movies.
Yeah, stoner or rom-coms. Like, you know, so a lot of times people don't take him seriously, but he was really giving it his all. Like, you know, when he was like depression drunk and shit like this and all that stuff. Like, yes, it was like a little bit overacty and hokey, but everyone in this cast is that.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to be a comic book from the 60s. So, like, you don't blame him for that, and he's doing it well. I mean, you know, and he does get some of the more dramatic moments.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he played it up very well. And the scenes we have with MJ, now, I'm not completely sold on this MJ. Like,
oh, yeah.
She's not my favorite.
I'm not really sold on this MJ either.
Yeah. This MJ, not super impressive, but that's okay. Whatever. She did her part as plot device. That's fine. And Peter's character development. Whatever.
Oh, also, another thing that I kind of have some fucking misgivings with is like when she finds out that Peter is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And she's like,
I think I always knew.
Yeah, and if you were more comic accurate, you would have always known. Because Mary Jane Watson is one of the first people who figured out Peter was Spider-Man. That's another cool thing about her character. She was the first to know. Like, one of the first, at least. Because, remember, Peter and MJ lived right next door to each other. And she just happened to look out her window at the wrong time and saw Spider-Man climbing out of Peter's window. And saw Peter not there and a bunch of clothes on the floor. And she was like, Well, my friend Peter is Spider-Man, so that's neat. And because of that, she got very angry when Spider-Man failed to save Gwen, and confronted Peter about it. Like, you let Gwen die. I know you're Spider-Man, Peter.
Oof.
Yeah. And then they ended up getting married.
The end.
Yeah, then they ended up getting married. MJ got pregnant and then didn't. And then they were about to get pregnant again. And then they sold the marriage to the devil to save Aunt May, who was fine with dying and being reunited with Ben.
What?
All because the main person at Marvel Comics didn't like that Peter was married anymore because it wasn't what he had as a kid. Much like how that Dark Knight Returns, that really dark and edgy Batman comic that seems to be the only thing that anybody remembers of Batman anytime they try to make a movie of it. Mm-hmm. The reason that it was an aging and old, tired Batman that was beaten down by the world was purely because the writer was about to enter his 30s and didn't like that Batman was younger than him now.
Bruh.
That was literally the only reason that he made him old. He's like, I can't deal with Batman being younger than me. and then the guy at Marvel was like, I can't deal with Peter having a happy marriage. Because that means he's not a young playboy, and that's not what the kids like. And then he changed it, and everybody was like, this is not what we wanted.
Yeah.
They're starting to slowly backpedal on that. Him and Mary Jane are dating again, at least as far as I know. Again, I fell off of comics again because expensive, and also because I'm sure I have a huge fucking folder of backlog at my comic shop, and I'm afraid to go in there.
Anyway, I kind of wish we had more scenes with Otto because I really liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otto is a very complex character, especially in the modern day, and so it makes sense to make him a tragic figure. I don't know if like the whole Rosie wife thing, I think that's just made up for the movies. Mm-hmm. But that's where we get to see some of Sam Raimi's horror director show in with the fucking glass going into the eye.
Yeah, when we get...
With every angle that can possibly be done except for immediately showing the eye getting gouged.
Yeah, ooh.
Like I think there's even like a frame or two of actually seeing the eye, like the glass go into the eye. But like it cuts away right before anything grotesque could happen.
Yeah.
And then we just see her slump onto the floor dead, which in and of itself is like very provocative. They basically did it the same way that like a more mature cartoon would do it, where like they do it creatively to almost make it more like fucked up. You know? And then the whole fucking thing with Doc Ock's arms going rogue and killing all of those fucking doctors.
Yeah, that was some horror movie shit.
Yeah, like...
We won't know the extent of the damage until we get in there, so I suggest we cut off these mechanical arms, slice up the harness, and if need be, consider a laminectomy.
Anybody here take shop class?
Yeah, like, and the fucking tiny little Evil Dead reference with the chainsaw. Like, I can't believe it took until this to be like, oh, that's gotta be an Ash reference. Gotta be. It's literally someone triumphantly holding up a chainsaw while it revs. That's the only thing it's missing is it being red. And he's even trying to cut off a arm. Like, yeah, no, that shit was like graphic without being graphic.
Yeah.
Like, lady got pulled into the darkness with her nails dragging, and that was like concrete floor.
Yeah, it was super unsettling.
So even if she had lived, her nails would just be murdering her.
Yeah, it was super unsettling. A lot of oohs.
Yeah. As
the scene went on, it was rough.
Yeah, somehow even with like the fucking glass window shattering, security never showed up. Like,
yeah.
Then we have Doc Ock realizing like, oh shit, like, you know, these arms just killed people while I was a unconscious. No. And then the first thing he goes and tries to do is end himself. Like that's what he was trying to do. He's like, these things deserve to be at the bottom of the river and me along with them.
Yeah.
You know, he tries to kill himself and then the robot arms kind of like take over his brain.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a crazy guy.
Crazy guy with
Which that
arms.
whole thing of like the arms having an intelligence of their own and like warping his brain, not a thing.
Really?
Not a thing in the comics. As
Okay.
far as I know, it's never been.
Okay.
I think there have been times where the arms are actually grafted to him, like in an irreversible manner, but I don't think that's been the case for a long time. In fact, that might have been a thing where like it happened in the comics to reflect the movie, because that does happen sometimes. Like after Spider-Man 1, they eventually introduced a thing where Spider-Man got organic webs in the comics, so that people who saw the movie wouldn't be confused with him having web shooters.
I guess my thoughts overall, I can see why this movie was beloved, why people considered this to be the best Spider-Man movie during that time.
Mm.
I found it really charming. It was
Yeah.
The character development was great. Our villain was fun. Oh, great. Oh, I liked it.
No, I've
What?
realized something.
Yeah.
Anytime that there is an older movie that you are positive about, but it's not like the best movie in your opinion, you call it charming.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a pattern to the point where it almost sounds like, what charming primitives.
I genuinely, I know what you're talking about because I do know the step pattern as well, but I truly and genuinely did not mean it in that way for this movie.
I'm sure you didn't, but it is just funny. It's like, oh, look at the Neanderthals trying.
See, I could now, if we were talking about Spider-Man 1, then yes, that's exactly what I would mean. But
Oh, just wait until we get to the 70s Marvel movies.
well,
I'm going to show you Doctor Strange's pilot.
ooh.
It's the worst.
But I genuinely really, really liked this movie. This was very good.
Yeah, now you were telling me earlier that you had some questions about stuff in the movie.
Yeah, so throughout the movie, we get, like, Peter, as he's, doing his Spider-Man thing, his web shooters, they weren't working.
Yeah.
What happened? They never explained.
Yeah, like his powers were fading.
Yeah, like, I had a theory about it. I thought it had something to do with his self-doubts about himself.
Kind of. Like there's actually a reference to when that happened in the comics in the Silver Age, because like notice how like when it first started happening to him, he checks his forehead and then goes to a doctor.
Yeah.
There is a classic story where his powers are failing, and eventually at the end of the story he finds out he had the cold. So like the fact that his body was currently fighting off this virus and it was like fucking with him and he had a fever and all this stuff was messing with his powers. So
Okay.
like his powers are tied into his body, his physiology, and his like, current state.
Yeah.
But that was more of a reference and a red herring. I feel like probably that doctor scene, being like, oh, it's all in your head, blah, 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 was kind of used to just like kind of be like, haha, any of you comic nerds, we got you. It's not that. The real answer is way more narratively unsatisfying.
Oh, God, what is it?
Remember the one line where Doc Ock said, love isn't a thing that you can really keep to yourself. It's a thing that'll make you sick.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Wait, what happened right before Spider-Man desperately needed his powers back and immediately got them all back? The love of his life was in danger.
That is very disappointing.
Yeah, like you could buy into it of being like, well, he didn't want to be Spider-Man and then he wanted to be Spider-Man. It could be like way more like abstract and character devoted and stuff like that. But the way that it was in the movie, like kind of, and even with the it's WUV is a mental health thing. But like the way that they set it up in the story, it's like, man, if you keep love to yourself and don't, let yourself experience it and share it, it can make you sick. And he gets sick and can't be Spider-Man anymore. And even when he's not Spider-Man anymore, he's still trying to get Mary Jane. And like, and I have other problems with when he's not Spider-Man. Like, because he just, when he stops being Spider-Man, he almost stops being Peter Parker.
Yeah.
You know, because like, there's literally a fucking point in the movie where Peter Parker, now no longer being Spider-Man, which even before that, when like it's like, oh, I just gotta want to be Spider-Man again, and he like tries to jump again, he still falls from multiple stories up and survives. So he still, at some level, is still Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
He's just got mental blocks. And so he's never not superhuman in this story, at least the way I see it. He never actually physically loses his powers. And especially because all of his powers are organic in this one. Mm-hmm. Like, they would be tied to his mental state. You know, like, because you can... hypochondria exists. If you get too far in your head, you can start feeling symptoms. You know? So, him just constantly being like, Spider-Man ruins my life, Spider-Man ruins my life, Spider-Man ruins my life, his body is going to be like, oh, well, turn that off. Like,
yeah. You know, yeah.
hear you loud and clear, buddy. Ah! But, like... the fact that Peter Parker, who underneath those baggy clothes would still be shredded as fuck, sees a mugging going on right in front of him in broad daylight, weird, and then just looks, wish I could do something, and walks off.
You don't have to be Spider-Man to help.
No, and especially because if he had gone and helped, he probably would have seen that he could still punch those motherfuckers through a wall.
Yeah.
That man might have died.
Yeah.
That man might have died, and Peter did nothing. And then he, like, saves a little girl, and it's like, oh, some woman was trapped upstairs. Oh, what have I done? You've let multiple people die, Peter. You've let multiple people die. Like, it's not okay. That is something that Peter Parker would never do. Never, ever, ever do. Because there have even been stories in the comics where Peter loses his powers. And he still doesn't just blatantly ignore shit that's going on right in front of him because he can't. But yeah, whatever. But yeah, like, and I say but yeah a lot.
So yeah is mine.
Anyway, I even like that some of the minor characters got some more screen time. Mm-hmm. And there are so many characters who you can read into, like, oh, they know Peter's Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that guy at the Daily Bugle.
Robbie.
Yeah, Robbie. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah. I can't remember perfectly his last name. I think it's literally Robbie Robson. But he's a very long time supporting cast member of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. He has always been at the Daily Bugle. I think he runs the Daily Bugle now, unless that's been given back to J. Jonah. So anyway, Peter starts losing his powers.
Yeah.
He misses a show by Mary Jane, finds out that Mary Jane is getting married to J. Jonah's son, who is Space Wolf.
Space Wolf.
Yes, Space Wolf.
Now this one I do want to know a little more about him, because technically this character is in the movie.
Fuck, okay, let me get my phone.
You actually don't know anything about him?
They haven't used the character in decades, Kat. They haven't used the character in decades.
But can I, like, should I wait until the end to talk about, like, what MJ did to this poor man?
Oh yeah, she fucking ruined his life. But yeah, Space Wolf, John Jonah Jameson III, current alias Man Wolf.
Man Wolf.
Yeah, which used to be a different character. Jonah's son was also Carnage at one point. At one point, apparently, he was dating She-Hulk and got called Mrs. She-Hulk. Star God Van Wolf. Aunt May is his step-grandmother because her and J. Jonah Jameson's dad got married. Meaning Jonah and Peter are our stepbrothers, since May adopted Peter, making her his adoptive mother as well as aunt. So they are both step cousins and step siblings.
Weird.
I'm my own grandpa. Human mutate astronaut who contracted an extraterrestrial virus that led to his transformation into a man-wolf. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in another universe, he was a superhero.
Yeah. In fact, apparently, like, man-wolves are a whole fucking race in Marvel. Usually brought on by the virus. It's essentially a sci-fi way to explain werewolves. Mm-hmm. So, like, there have been multiple people who have been man-wolf, but he was space wolf.
Okay. Which, I mean, he was an astronaut, right? In this movie?
Yeah.
Man, what a catch. And then MJ...
There's actually a shit ton of, like, hints at other Spider-Man characters. Mm-hmm. I mean, his professor, Kirk Connors, like, you noticed that he only had one arm, right?
I didn't notice that, actually.
Yeah, the whole time he was walking around with, like, one sleeve just dangling around.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
He was only ever using one hand.
Didn't notice it.
You need to up your perception. He's the lizard.
The lizard.
Yeah. He experiments with reptile DNA because reptiles can regrow their tails, and he's trying to regrow his arm.
Oh.
And, any limb that anybody has lost. He's trying to essentially circumvent the need for prosthetics by just giving humans the ability to regrow their limbs like a reptile. Mm-hmm. And it works too well, and he turns into the lizard and eats his son.
Oof.
Just straight up eats his son.
That's messed up, man.
Yeah, that didn't happen for a long time into the lizard being the lizard, but essentially the lizard killed the personality of Kirk Connors, and the way to do that was to basically get rid of the last thing that Connors loved that helped him retain his humanity. And so while the lizard was in control, he ate Connors' offspring. And they showed it, they didn't show it on screen, but they showed a lot of the bloody aftermath.
Oh, God.
And, like, I think, like, a hand of, Connors, of Connors' kid.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter found that and was just like, Kurt, what the fuck did you do? What did you do? And, like, all that stuff. And now, Connors is just stuck as the lizard. Or was stuck as the lizard. With Connors' mind, which is technically a fate worse than death, because now he's stuck in the body that murdered his child. And I think it had been just long enough that probably the taste of his boy's flesh was probably still on the tongue.
Ooh.
So, fate worse than death. And now he's trying to redeem himself by also being a teacher at the place that Peter is teaching at, I think. I forget. But, like, they're trying to redeem that character, and I'm like, you can't. He ate a kid. His own kid. I'm sorry. I remember that story. No. But yeah, so he was Space Wolf. Not Lizard was Space Wolf. Jonah Jameson III.
Jonah Jameson III.
Was Space Wolf. But yeah, Kirk Connors is in the movie. He's Lizard eventually. And actually, like, I kept being confused because, like, in Spider-Man 2, the game, I'm pretty sure there's a subplot where he does become the Lizard. Mm-hmm. And then in Spider-Man 3, there's a subplot where he becomes the Lizard. So they just kept doing that. And I'm like, so when are they actually going to do that in the films? And then Spider-Man 3 killed the whole series. Yeah. And also Spider-Man 4 still wasn't going to have the Lizard be the Lizard. It was going to have the Vulture.
Oh.
Which is kind of funny because now the first MCU movie of Spider-Man had the Vulture. Which makes sense because, like, the Vulture is kind of the first super villain that Spidey ever fought.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks that, like, Spider-Man's first and greatest nemesis, the Green Goblin. Wrong! It was the Vulture. And then I think the first one to actually have, like, real superpowers was Electro. Before that, it was all, like, just, like, science-aided. I was about to say, oh man, we've never had Electro in a Spider-Man movie. Yes, we have. There was a few brief moments there where I joyously forgot about it. Amazing Spider-Man 2. So that's what happiness feels like. But yeah, so like Robbie being in the movies means that the supervillain that he's connected with could have been in the movies eventually. He's connected to the Tombstone.
The Tombstone.
Yeah, I don't think it's the Tombstone. I think it's just Tombstone. Who is like basically like a living zombie that can't die.
Mm-hmm.
And is like extremely hard to put down at all. And then I'm trying to think of other things. I know that there were other references to other things. I mean, there was a reference to Doctor Strange, which again is funny in hindsight.
What are we gonna call this guy?
Dr. Octopus.
That's crap.
Science Squid?
Crap.
Doctor Strange.
That's pretty good. But it's taken.
And of course, there was Harry. There was that cameo by Dafoe.
Dafoe?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe. Norman.
Oh, yeah.
Dafoe, Cat.
I forgot.
You can't diss on my boy Dafoe.
I'm sorry.
You can't diss on Christopher Walken Light. Now with half the calories. But in this case, calories is awkward phrasing. I love Willem Dafoe when he goes crazy.
Brand name and great value.
No! Great value is a knockoff and implies that Willem Dafoe is lesser than. No, this is Dr. Pepper and Dr. Pepper Zero. Same great taste, but like, less crazy. Slightly less crazy. Just as crazy. But different.
Different kind of crazy.
Yeah. I'm sure there were others, but I'm just missing on. Oh, also Bruce Campbell was in it, and a lot of people were thinking that he was eventually going to be the Chameleon. Because he plays Bruce Campbell in every movie, but he plays a different character. In the first, he was the wrestling announcer who gave Spider-Man his name. This one, he's a fucking he's the front doorman, maitre d' or whatever. And he's something in the third movie too.
Something different again, right?
Yeah, and so
maybe the man just has a lot of jobs.
And no, he's a different character in every single one.
Oh.
But in the next one, he has an accent. But so a lot of people were thinking that he was going to end up being revealed to be the Chameleon, and he was also going to he knows Spider-Man's secret right off the bat, because he's been stalking him or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
But that never happened. He was also the narrator in the Spider-Man games.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me that.
I loved the tutorial of Spider-Man 1 because literally halfway through the tutorial, he's like, all right, I'll be back. I'm getting a sandwich.
I'm going to grab a ham sandwich. Whenever you're done beating bad guys up, follow your compass and height meter. Okay, so here you are on the side of a building. Your next marker is up, so you could crawl. If you press the zip line key while crawling on a wall, you'll web zip in the direction you're crawling. Now, don't say I never did anything for you. Oh, too much mustard.
I feel like Bruce Campbell said, no, I have to do this.
It's probably. Who would tell him no? It's going to be like, man, Bruce, can you just... he's a friend of the director of the movie. Shut up. This man is Ashley J. Williams. You do not tell him shit. He will fucking cut you up with a chainsaw. Guys, that was just a character. Yeah, whatever you say. God, we need to watch some Bruce Campbell movies on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm trying to think. Yeah, but since this is majorly a character piece, there is a plot, but it's not the most interesting part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's more fun to just think about who knows Peter's Spider-Man. Because, Robbie probably knows Peter is Spider-Man. Because, when it's I heard Spider-Man was there, and he, gives Peter, a look of, you were there. And then, when it's, it looks like Spider-Man quit, and, Robbie is huh, and then he, looks to a picture of Spider-Man that is taken by Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's huh. So, it's I can only assume that he's just oh, no, is Peter all right?
Do you think Aunt May knows in the movie?
I think she does.
Yeah.
I think she does after the point where he told her what happened to Ben.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it was. Because, she would have started putting two and two together of like, oh, he felt guilty about Ben. You know, he wanted to do something about it. He was going for a contest to win money. What contests were there? Well, there was that wrestling thing. Isn't that where Spider-Man showed up? And then he ran off at the bank. I thought he was just leaving me, but then Spider-Man showed up and was trying really hard to save me. You know? Like, and then she's giving him this pep talk. But, like, people need heroes. You know, like, all this stuff, you know. I think everyone needs a hero. That little boy needs a hero. I needed a hero to tell me to hang on for just one more second. Go be Spider-Man, you dingus.
Ow! Don't throw things at me. I was gonna say, and that's probably part of the reason why I like the movie so much is it's like, I think it's just like what kind of form of storytelling you like. Do you like having an intricate story, or do you like, or are you the kind of person that's like, the story I could give less of a shit about, I care more about the character and their journey?
Well, I think the success of the MCU means that most people are like, I don't give a fuck what the plot is. The characters, though.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, and speaking of comics,
now
that Aunt May knows, let's spin the wheel of how will we retcon this? Because Aunt May has figured out that Peter and Spider-Man are the same person, I think, like 5 times, and they keep being like, never mind, she doesn't know, don't look over here.
Ooh.
But anyway, yeah, the plot just kind of, it's not like a lot doesn't happen, but it's just kind of like intercut things. It's almost kind of episodic in a way.
When I think about the movie, I don't think of like a plot from point A to B. I think of different scenes.
Yeah, it's more character studies.
Like the scene like the train scene where
which I feel like the train scene, or actually really rather when Otto shows up at Harry's place.
Yeah.
And then to the end, that's what everybody really remembers from Spider-Man 2. That makes them go like, this is the best Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because even as a kid, I was like, that kind of section in the middle where it's to raindrops are falling on my head, where it's just like Peter Parker having slice of life TV show opening. Mm-hmm. That's kind of weird. Even the part where it like freeze frames for a second.
Yeah.
Just to continue with the scene.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
I was honestly kind of expecting Kat for you to just be like, oh, it's skipping.
That's what I thought it was, but I didn't say it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just kind of weird. There's a lot of weird choices, especially in transitions. Some of them are very cool. Others of them are very pointless, like the whoa wavy transition. I'm like, was George Lucas directing the transitions here? No, that's not possible. There's no horizontal vertical wipes. Oh.
But yeah, as far as something else I wanted to bring up, another scene that I thought was really, really funny was when it's like, maybe that Spider-Man wasn't so bad after all.
There's actually a deleted scene from this movie where it cuts to Jonah wearing Spidey's outfit, jumping on his disc going, thwip, thwip. So just imagine J.K. Simmons doing that.
I love it.
Which kind of like harkened back to the original reason that Jonah didn't like Spider-Man was because he was jealous of him. But yeah, like a lot of the plot just kind of is there to get characters from one place to another place, which I guess you could say about any movie. But like, it's like, we see that Aunt May's house is under foreclosure, so that gets us to the bank. Why are we at the bank? Because Otto's at the bank, because he wants to steal some money. Mm-hmm. That way there can be a Spider-Man and Otto fight scene where Aunt May is in danger to spice things up a bit, and like even the thing of like Spider-Man losing his powers, it's just to like create a conflict, because anytime he actually needs his powers to work, they work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, why can't my webs work? Oh, I'm caught by Otto. Thwip, thwip. Yeah. So it's like barely a problem.
Yeah.
Like it's not a strong plot, and I think that's because it's not supposed to be. It's a character piece on, this is Peter figuring out, okay, what do I want? Do I want to be Peter Parker, do I want to be Spider-Man or do I want to try to have both? And I think at the end he's like, I guess I want to try to have both, you know? But I realized that in trying to have both, I'm going to have to give some shit up as Peter to be Spider-Man. Because other people need Spider-Man more than I need me, I guess, is like the thing that they're trying to go for. But yeah, so like, eventually, you know, Harry is threatened by by Octavius. It's like, I need the tritium. It's like, I need the unobtainium. I need the MacGuffinanium.
I need the plot device.
Yeah, I need the plot device. And it's like, fine, but like, I need Spider-Man dead. Peter will know where to get him. And then it's like, fine, okay, I'll go kill Peter. No, don't hurt Peter.
Wait a second, what?
I was told not to hurt you, Peter. Harry said nothing about you, ex-girlfriend. Peter, help! Hold on, I'm under some things. I gotta wait until nobody's here. I'm Spider-Man!
Whee!
Nobody saw that, right?
Yeah.
Alright, my powers are back.
Let's
Get
go.
rid of these glasses that were probably expensive. But yeah, so like, all of that stuff is basically just to, alright, let's get these two characters to interact. And then that, you know, there's the fucking sick train sequence, which, like, it starts on a clock tower, then goes to the fucking train, then the side of the train, inside the train, under the train, all around the train, and then Ock is like, haha, now the train can't stop. And everybody's like, Spidey, help, the train can't stop. He's like, no, don't worry, I'll stop this unstoppable train. That didn't work. What if I try again, but more? And then it worked.
Yeah.
And he goes into Christ pose twice. First, when he's on the train making I just farted faces. And then he passes out. Everybody gets all feely with him.
Yep.
Like, did you notice that some people were really just grabbing on?
I mean, yeah.
They were really wanting them super pecs. They're like, you.
They could go home and be like, I touched Spider-Man's chest today.
I touched Spider-Man's boobs. I have a lot of questions there, Harold. But yeah, so they're just like, don't worry, Spider-Man. We'll keep your secret. All of us will. Yeah. 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 Totally.
Yeah, because he just had his mask off for some reason.
Well, it's because there were embers or like sparks or something that went up and they were hitting his face, so he threw the mask off. Mm-hmm. But the smart thing to do would have been throw the mask off for a second and like in the wind go just like flap it around to get the fire out,
and then just
like pat it down and then
go, whoop,
put it back on. You know, but he didn't do that. And so the whole time he's at the front of the train, his face is just there.
So people could have seen.
Yeah, and were. It's like, any more bright ideas? Maybe. And yeah, it's just like, he's just a boy. Just a boy of 38. Like, no older than my son. But yeah, it's like, don't worry, Spider-Man. We won't tell nobody. Oh, well, the kids said we weren't going to tell anybody, so I guess we have to honor it. Well, you want to make the kids a liar? Shame on you.
You know, Doc comes down, and it's like, if you want to get the Spider-Man, you have to get through us.
Okay. Spider-Man, help! I didn't ask for you to do that. All right, come on. I'll go with you. Unnecessary. And he brings Spider-Man unconscious to Harry, who grabs a dagger that he just has for some reason and pulls off the mask. He's like, falls down. It's like, no, not you, Peter. You killed my papa. And instead of doing the thing that would have been smart and being like, no, I didn't. Your dad killed your dad. What? Your dad was the Green... Have you not clued into the fact that your dad was the Green Goblin yet? He was still in the Green Goblin outfit when I put him here. Also, don't think I didn't notice that you put me in the exact same place. Rude. But yeah, he was killed by blades, Harry. When has that ever been part of my MO? Do you see any pockets to hold blades? No. But you know who did have blades? The Goblin Glider that your dad made. Your dad was the Green Goblin, Harry. Sorry to tell you this. Gee, I wonder why I didn't before. Maybe I kind of wanted to save you from the stress of being, hey, your dad was a supervillain who killed a bunch of people. With you, right there. And also, your dad literally, his dying words were, don't tell Harry. So, guess the cat's out of the bag now. Sorry, Norman. But Harry was so desperate to know. Fucking was just too fucking heralded by revenge. Oops-a-daisy, because I have to break that promise. Sorry.
Once again, things could have been avoided if there was some fucking communication.
Yep. But instead it's just like, there are bigger things right now, Harry. He has MJ. It's like, that was the fucking worst and weirdest thing you could have said, Peter. But yeah.
Basically telling him, your problems don't matter. He has the girl that I took from you.
Yeah. He has the girl that we both liked, and I get to fuck and you don't.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so it's just like, what do you And it's like, he just wanted the tritium. The tritium? He's gonna blow up half of New York. You killed my dad. Shut up, Harry. I'll explain later. And then he like goes off, somehow finds where he is. I don't know how he did that. Because just like, he's going to rebuild it. Huh. And then goes off and immediately finds it. Not sure how that happened. And then him and Otto fight a little bit more. And that's eventually, like, he beats Otto into his senses again. Otto goes, listen to me now. And the tentacles are like, okay, it is your turn. Mom did say it's your turn to play with the Nintendo. And then he takes the thing, like the mini sun down, and says the line that weirdly stuck with me as a kid of, I will not die a monster. And then dies.
Yeah.
As arguably still a monster. A tragic figure, but definitely a monster. He killed many.
Yeah.
Some of them with a smile on his face. And yeah, so
after that,
Mary Jane is like, oh my gosh, Peter, you're Spider-Man. And he goes, yeah, we can't be together. Go get married. And she goes, okay.
And then
actually, psych! And then runs all the way across New York.
In a wedding dress.
And is like, I want to be with you. Go get him, Tiger. And then like we cut back to her watching him swing away, and she's frowning. And I'm like,
weird way to end this.
She's just really indecisive. That's Spider-Man 2. The Spider-Man parts are really good.
Yeah.
I care so little about everything else now.
It definitely did not hold up on a rewatch for you.
Yeah, especially just because now that we have the MCU, which is so interconnected, and the Spider-Man comics have always been some of the most interconnected comics, having Spider-Man just in his own universe with so little even reference to an outside superhero community just rings hollow and false, you know? Like, hell, even in the PS4 game, Avengers Tower is right there. The Sanctum Sanctorum is right there. Like, you can see Murdoch, defense attorney, which is Daredevil. You can see Jessica Jones' place, you know? I think the Baxter Building may or may not be in it, I forget. I know it's in the PS1 games. So, I think there's even a Wakandan embassy in the PS4 one, you know? It's like, oh, I wonder what King T'Challa's up to, you know? And so it's just like, I don't know. It was fine at the time, but now I'm just like, man, be so cool if there were other heroes in this movie. You know, it's just odd. And like, I know that one of the criticisms of the current Spider-Man is like Peter doesn't really get to be his own character, because it's like, oh, well, he's just trying to be mini Iron Man, or or then it's like he's trying not to be mini Iron Man, and he's just bouncing around from father figure to father figure. It's just like, Tony, will you be my dad? I guess dead. Oh, Mysterio, will you be my dad? Nah, I'm evil. Oh, okay. Are you my mama?
He just wants a dad.
Yeah, it's literally just the Dr. Seuss book, Are You My Mama? I think that was a Dr. Seuss book.
I think it is.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, and we still have not had a mention of Ben in.
Oh, that's right.
Still haven't had an Uncle Ben scene, which I get why they dropped it, but now like they refuse to even say Ben's name. I think maybe it's written on like Peter's suitcase in Far From Home. I think it's implied that was Ben's suitcase, but like we don't even know how Ben died in this, because there are a few different ways that it could have died. Like, because in the Sam Raimi movies, he dies on the street. In the comics, he dies in his own home in front of May. In the Ultimate Universe, I forget, but it's a slightly different there too, Or hell, if they keep wanting to make Peter Parker Miles Morales, what if Ben was a supervillain? Oh! Not to mention, like, we still haven't gotten in a movie the fact that Peter Parker's parents were killed by the Red Skull.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, we almost got it in the Amazing Spider-Man things. They had been alluding to the fact that there was some secret stuff going on with his parents, because actually they were CIA agents. But also they had clones at one point. Also, Peter has a sister.
Really?
Well, did.
Oh.
I think she got written out. I think she got retconned.
Ooh.
But at one point, yeah, he had a sister.
But I'm pretty much wrapped up on my thoughts on Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. Spider-Man 2, the other thought I have is like, yes, it's hokey. Yes, it's cheesy. I would still watch the Spider-Man Sam Raimi movies, including 3, 50,000 times over than any of the dark, edgy DC movies. Except for maybe Joker, because at least that one is actually competent with it. Instead of just being, fucking Snyder or some other edgy director going, oh I'm so edgy. Because that's all they're doing. That's all they're doing. They're just dark, edgy boys. Just like, the best era in comics were the 90s! Which, no, they weren't. In the 90s, they made Spider-Man have inner monologues that almost made it imply that he had a split personality called the Spider. Because edginess. Everything has to be Spawn or Punisher.
They gotta do what's popular.
Yeah. I hate Man of Steel. I hate Man of Steel. You want to know why?
Why?
Superman's outfit should not be the blue of a nighttime sky. Superman should not snap someone's neck.
What?
Like, Superman should not... Like, and this is actually from Batman v Superman, but, like, Superman should not be a person who's like, humanity doesn't respect and appreciate what I do for them. Well, fine, I quit. That's not Superman. You know what Superman is? Superman's the guy who, if he was given Spider-Man's reality and everyone being like, you're a menace to society, we hate you, he would still be saving them and being like, love you. Because that's Superman. Giving that to the guy who made 300 was a mistake right off the fucking bat. But the only reason they did it was because Watchmen made a lot of money. And I hate it. I hate it. I would watch these Spider-Man movies 50,000 times over. I would watch the Red Brown Captain Americas 100,000 times over, and those objectively suck. I would watch the Spider-Man Japanese Sentai show so many times more. I would watch the fucking 70s Superman movies, even the shitty ones that went into the 80s. so many thousand times more, I would rather watch the black and white Superman that crossed over with I Love Lucy. I would rather watch Adam West Batman so many other times. Because I think that Adam West Batman is actually a truer representation of Batman than anything we have gotten recently. Because when I see the fucking Batman, anything past Batman Begins, I don't see a man who took up a crusade to make sure that no child suffered the same fate as him again, as an avenging knight with a high moral ethic code and paragon nature. I don't see that. You know what I see? I see a fucking crazy guy who's just as bad as the villains that he fights. And that's not Batman. But anyway, yeah, Spider-Man 2, it didn't have a Nickelback song, so that gives it some points off. I don't even remember if it had any tie-in song. So that's some major points against it. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man 3 had a song tied in with it. It wasn't Nickelback though, so who cares?
Is it? I typically don't really care if it's. I don't really usually care about the songs that are tied into a movie.
Normally I don't either, but Spider-Man. Like, the fact that MCU movies don't normally have a song tied in with them is kind of sad to me, because I want to see superheroes interacting with music stars in their music videos. Deadpool did. Like, Deadpool did ballet in the music video tied in with his movie. Oh. It was cool. It was really cool. And I'm about to dive in. But anyway, we've gone so far over time because it's a comic book movie.
Yeah, I figured when we sat down to record this, I'm like, all right, I'm expecting this. We're going to be sitting here for another 2 hours, just like
absolutely.
Spider-Man 1.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like Marvel is a thing I know a fuck ton about. Because when I was like 2, my dad was like, here's a comic, have that be the first thing you read. And then my fate was sealed. It was that, and here's your first console at 2. It's a Nintendo. Cut to now. And I'm right here, exactly where I was going to be. In a room where I have Zelda poster, Okami poster, 2 Pokemon posters, one done by Ken Sugimori himself, signed, a Lady and the Tramp poster, mangas, comics, all sorts of nerd shit. So, but yeah, any closing thoughts for you?
Not that I can think of right now. I enjoyed this movie. Mm-hmm. I wish I could say that I'm looking forward to Spider-Man 3, but...
I still think that the costume design in the movie was really great. The weakest, of course, was Mary Jane.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that hat? And yeah, I really love the character designs in Spider-Man 1 and 2. Spider-Man 3,
I remember here again. I'm gonna flash back to like, I hope because I don't know, for some reason this middle school memory sticks out to me, but I don't remember the specifics. But I remember people in the band room just arguing about whether or not Spider-Man 3 was a good movie or not, and I do vaguely remember one of them complaining about Spidey's costume. So
yeah. That's it for us, guys.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments, bring them up to us on Twitter. We are Out of the Ice Pod.
Yep.
And
we also have a YouTube channel, Kingdom of Geekalon. We do this podcast and some other videos on there. And I think that's it for us.
Yeah.
All right. Later, everybody.
Thanks for listening.